Americans want to once again see America as the indispensable nation on earth. And based on what Trump says he's going to do, that's what he is promising. With us now, Marc, chairman of the board for Advancing American Freedom, Trump's administration's first term director of legislative affairs. Welcome to the program.
Thanks, Leland.
It's good to see you.
Thanks for having me.
You worked with Donald Trump. Do I sort of have this right?
I think you got it exactly right. I think it's in part a contrast to what the previous 4 years were of showing American weakness on the national stage, and he's projecting strength. I think there's a little bit more to it, too. There's some trolling going on as Jimmy Carter lies in rest right here, and you know he gave away the Panama Canal. I'm sure that Trump wants to have part of that.
He talked about that. I mean, he went after it. He said the worst thing that Jimmy Carter did as the funeral was happening was the Panama Canal. So there you go.
Yes. I think additionally, as Joe Biden and Kamala Harris both go on international tours this week to talk about what they've done, I think Trump wants the conversation to talk about the contrast in foreign policy. So I think some of this is trolling, some of it's stunt, but I do think it's very serious about Greenland. And I think that when I was in the first administration with Vice President Pence, we took a trip to the Arctic and met in Iceland with Arctic nations about the threat that China poses to us, because they're investing enormously in Arctic nations and the passageways that are developing there in that area that you can now navigate. And so that is a more serious conversation. I'm not suggesting there'll be an invasion, but I do think it's serious to us to be talking about the Arctic Circle and Russia investments and China investments, and America needs to be investing as well.
I go back to this idea, and I think the only thing, it's not that they don't get it, it's that they sort of want to find material outrage, because I think you and I both understand there's not going to be an invasion of Greenland or of Panama. But economic coercion is where there are possibilities for the Trump administration, second Trump administration. Does he throw this out intentionally to troll the media, or is it an opening negotiating position with world leaders?
I think it's both. I mean, some of it, again, is trolling. Like I said, I do think that the Panama element is the timeliness of Jimmy Carter's funeral, I think, is there. But as I said, I think in Greenland there should be a negotiation, and I think there is a serious issue in.
No coincidence, Donald Trump Jr. was there today.
I don't know that you'd send Donald Trump Jr. to be your negotiator, but
emissary.
Having said that, I do think it's a more serious issue that America should be paying attention to, is what's happening in the Arctic. Again, particularly with Chinese investments there.
Yeah, no, it's huge. And in terms of what Greenland means, in terms of the passageway to the Arctic, also U.S. early warning and the like. I noticed today this huge pivot to foreign policy in this press conference. An hour-and-a-half long press conference. There was a little bit about domestic investment in data centers and then to foreign policy. Is there, you think, are you seeing a realization that the domestic policies that are going to require congressional approval, tax cuts, some things about the border, big policy changes, there's an acknowledgement that that's going to be a lot harder than, say, foreign policy that can be done like this?
I'm not sure. I agree with you, it's going to be harder. I'm not sure there's an acknowledgement it's going to be harder. I think that having one big bill is a reality that passing two budgets would be very difficult for Republicans to do two budget reconciliations. And I think one makes a lot more sense, and it's going to take time. And there's going to be probably an impatience from the Trump White House that Congress isn't providing more legislative victories to them. I think that is a reality. But I also think it's time to recognizing that Biden's going to Italy, Kamala Harris is going on her own tour across the globe to say, let me show you what my foreign policy is going to be and how it's different from theirs.
This idea of a Trump doctrine of projecting strength, you worked with him for 4 years. Where does that come from? What is his worldview that informs this?
I don't know that it's so much of a doctrine that is really formed on a history or an understanding of deep study. I think it's more just an innate perspective that America should project strength on the world stage. And I think, I think that it worked very effectively in the first administration, whether or not you're talking about Donald Trump taking out Russian mercenaries in Syria, what we were projecting as far as strength in our relationship with Asia. And so I hope that continues. I confess to you, I do have some concerns. I think that the CCP has benefited from this transition so far. When you look at Trump reversing his opinion on TikTok and also allowing China to be the world's biggest manufacturer of steel by joining with Biden and opposing the U.S. steel merger. So I do have concerns about that and not replicating the first administration. I hope it goes back to having a strong policy toward China.
It's a great point. And also a great point in terms of where sort of the world now is going back to remembering what Donald Trump was like in the first administration, especially on foreign policy. Marc, it's good to see you.
Great to see you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.